He is one of my personal mentors, as well as many of the individuals on the line tonight. Tonight, I'm hoping that he will be a new mentor of yours, okay? So he stands behind being millionaire minded. He listened to affirmations when he was just homeless in his car not too many years ago. So listen, the information that he's about to give you tonight is definitely going to elevate your life, elevate your business, whether you're in leadership or, you're going to work, whatever the case may be, trying to be a leader in your home. Tonight, you want to make sure that you take notes. Not a call that you just listen to where you don't have notes, okay? So tonight's call is entitled How to Spring Clean Your Life Using the Magical 80-20 Rule. So without further ado, Mr. Haziq Ali, are you on the line, sir?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Take it away.
Oh, man, what a blessing to be here with you this evening. My name is Haziq Ali, and I just want to give it right back to Mrs. Ali Goins, because what an incredible leader that she is. What an incredible leader I'm watching her become. The main thing about this thing that we call leadership, y'all, is that you want to get into a place where you understand you got to serve before you deserve. And a lot of people get that. A lot of people don't. But I'm going to tell you, you can easily spot the ones that get it, because they are the ones that end up rising to the top of any situation they're in. So we're going to jump right into it, y'all, because when it comes to you kind of preparing your life so that you can go further, faster, with less effort, I find few things to be as fascinating as this concept that I'm about to share with you this evening. The year was 1896. And a cat named Vilfredo Pareto was busy in his garden. He was there in Italy, as you may make out by his name, but he made an interesting observation. What he discovered is while he was going through the peas and harvesting the peas in his garden, he discovered that some of the pea pods had a lot more peas in them than others. When he began to count, what he discovered was that 80% of the peas came from only 20% of the pea pods. So what does that mean? What that means is that if you count them and there were 10 pea pods with 50 peas in total, you would expect that each pea pod had 5 peas in it. In other words, we would expect that each pea pod would more or less have the same number of peas in it. But Vilfredo found something different, and it's changed civilization. It has changed the world of the achiever, because what he discovered, y'all, was that 20% of the pea pods, i.e., 2 out of every 10 had 80% of the peas. 40 out of every 50 peas came from that little small amount. You get what I mean? 2 of the peas in that example provided 80%. 2 of the pea pods provided 80% of the peas. In other words, 2 pea pods had more peas in them, 40 peas, than the remaining 8 of them combined. The remaining 8 only had 10 in total, but 2 of them had 40. Those 2 were more valuable than the remaining 8. Now, here's what's crazy. Vilfredo was also an economist. So what he began to do is look at everything around him, and he started to notice the same exact pattern. Even when it came to how wealth was distributed in Italy, he found that 20% of the people in Italy owned 80% of the land. The remaining 80% of the population owned about 20% of the land. But that first 20% were the very wealthy. And the pattern still holds true today. In most economies, there's a small group of people who have most of the wealth. But check it out. This 80-20 pattern is everywhere, y'all. It's known as a Pareto Principle. In honor of this cat I was just telling you about, Vilfredo Pareto. Here are some more examples that you'll start to see. When you analyze crime statistics, it's generally found that 20% of the criminals commit 80% of the crime. These 20% are the repeat offenders. In the business world, if you analyze your sales, you're going to find that 20% of your customers give you 80% of your sales. These are your most valuable customers. When you look at the performance of your salespeople, your downline, your team, your employees, your staff, you'll find that 20% of them generate 80% of your sales. These are your superstar salespeople. If you're a nonprofit organization, you'll find 80% of your donations come from 20% of your donors. Listen to me. The Pareto Principle also applies in a negative sense, right? 80% of your customer complaints will come from 20% of your customers. A small group of customers, y'all, will be way more difficult to service than the rest of them combined. Microsoft once reported that they'd be able to solve 80% of system crashes by fixing the top 20% of the system bugs. I could go on and on and on. And I know you're thinking to yourself, you're like, yo, is this always 80-20? It's not always 80-20. Sometimes it could be 90-10. Sometimes it can be 70-30. But the principle holds really true. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that a minority of the items on your list will be responsible for most of the output, most of the impact. This is called the Pareto Principle, or the law of the vital few and the trivial many. It teaches us that there are very few things which are very important, y'all, the vital few. At the same time, there are always a large number of things which ain't as important, aka the trivial many. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're saying, well, Haziq, how do I apply this to my life? You promised me a way to use this principle so that I could spring clean my mind, spring clean my life. I'm about to give it to you, y'all, because what I need you to understand is that there are ways you can use this principle to start living your best life. And I'm going to give you 5 of them. Everybody ready? All right, let's get started. Because I know if you're anything like most entrepreneurs, you have found yourself with a mind full of crap. It's happened to the best of us. Of course you have. We've all been there. Here's the trick. You don't have to live that way. When you use this Pareto principle, you'll be able to declutter your mind. You'll be able to build more of a solid foundation and making sure that the race you're running is the race you want to win. So before we go there, just to recap, we've discovered that the Pareto principle says that roughly 80% of your results come from 20% of your input. So let's get started. Here's step number 1, y'all. We're going to do a little writing. We're going to do a little writing, y'all. You ready? Your most effective life. Let's face it. There are many, many, many people that we know, many people in our families who will spend their entire lives living with something that makes them unhappy. Maybe it's your morning commute. Maybe it's the junk you eat for breakfast. Maybe it's the way you spend your downtime. Now, it's not just out here screaming at you. Maybe it's even a little hard to spot. But if you take a minute and sit down and kind of jot this down, try and identify the moments in our lives that make us unhappy. Now you can start creating the process of your best life. Sometimes you got to transition that thing, right? This is one of them easier said than done things. You get comfortable, right? But this is where the 80-20 rule comes in, y'all. Because the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what kind of life do I want to live? Huh? What makes me the happiest? If I've had the worst day of my life, what activity can I jump into that'll calm me down, right? And set me back on track? Tim Ferriss used the 80-20 law to create something called the 4-Hour Work Week, which is an incredible book, okay? But what he suggests doing is sitting down and doing a little free writing, where you just sit there, put pen and paper, and don't lift it back up. And he says free write at least 3 pages with these 2 prompts I'm about to give you. The first one is, what are the 20% of interactions, activities, people, commitments that give me 80% of my positive emotions and enjoyment? What are the 20% of activities and commitments and people and interactions that give me 80% of my positive emotions and enjoyment? That's a fun subject, isn't it? Here's the second one for you. What are the 20% of interactions, people, commitments, okay, activities that give me 80% of the headaches, the stress, the overall negativity in my life? Here's a little bonus for you, right? Here's a little bonus for you. What could this look like if it were really easy? You know, if I had to pull it off in a week, how could I do that? Kind of fun, right? Kind of fun. Thinking about things in a different way. Here's the second way you can use this 80-20 law. You can use it like I'm going to call this the toy box example, right? Let's call it declutter your life. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find I could be thinking about 100 different things at once, right? It's exhausting, okay? The thing is, how many of these superfluous thoughts that we have can we get rid of? Should we actually think about it? How much crap do we actually need in our mind? According to Pareto, it's only about 20% of what's actually clogging our brains. Let me tell you who understands this. Your children. We got any parents out there? Let me tell you who understands this. Your children. Let me tell you what your kids got. They got this huge toy box, right? Full of spectacular variety. Am I right? And even amongst this United States of advertising, consumer-driven horde of toys, you know what they do? They always reach for the same toy that they play with over and over and over again, right? Because it makes them happy. Am I making sense? In essence, all those extra toys are just cluttering the space. And it's the same thing with us. Cluttering our play space. It's the same thing with us. What I'm saying is, write down a list of all the things you did today and mark them off, right? Which ones are essential? Which ones make you happy? Which ones don't? And then it's time to be ruthless. You know, I'm getting a property ready to rent out. And, you know, there's just so much stuff in there. I was joking with, you know, my contractor about the fact that, like, the older you get, the more crap you just have. It's like you get older and older, and you're like, you don't want to throw that out because there's a memory attached, and you don't want to throw that out because there's a memory attached. I'm like, you know, even with all the stuff your children give you and all that, like, where are you supposed to put this stuff? This is why running storage units is such a great business, right? Because we just don't want to throw anything out, even though it's cluttering our play space. And so we talked about, it's like, I've got to be ruthless with what I throw away. I just got to get rid of all of this stuff. Some of it I can sell, some of it I can give, you know, but the whole point is I got to get rid of it. Millionaires, you've got to be ruthless with your efficiency. Write down a list of what makes you feel as though it's essential, what things make you happy, right? And then it's time to cut out the bad ones. Here's the third one I got for you. You're going to start to feel better immediately. Here's the third one. Refocus. Refocus. Now that we've removed the clutter from our lives, right? It's time to zero in now on the parts that actually matter to you. And this is going to be different for everybody. But one thing that we can all agree to focus on is purpose. Maybe it's a calling. Maybe it's fate. Maybe it's some weekend fad, right? But we should approach each of them with a direct question. Is this worth giving 80% of my focus to? Is this worth focusing 80% of my time on? You know, I had a buddy that told me about, you know, his high school homecoming dance, right? And he just painted this vivid picture of free cake, you know, 6 sheet pans of it. You hear me? You know, glistening with all this frosting, right? Just sugar heaven, sugar rush, you know, just sugar fiend, right? How many pieces would you have eaten as a high schooler, right? He's like, yo, I'd have probably ate 6, 7, 8 pieces because that's what my stomach can handle, and the next thing you know, you're sick. And then, what's my point? If he'd only eaten 20% of his capacity, his night would have been fantastic. And he'd still love cake. Right about now, he probably, to this day, still don't want to see cake. But had he just eaten 20% of his. So what I'm saying is, this is where you take a second look at that list you made and ask which of these are actually worth the amount of time you spend on it. I bet you find some room to breathe a little bit more. There's this story Warren Buffett tells about a pilot who, he was his main pilot, and he was like, yo, in 10 years, I want to be flying this for you. And Warren Buffett was like, if you're still working for me in 10 years, we're doing something wrong. Because don't forget, you're not at your job for the bill collectors. You're at your job to be a skill collector. The minute you can do that job in your sleep, but you stay there just for a paycheck, you're selling your soul, right? So he said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go home and I want you to make a list of the top 100 things that you would do if failure was not an option. So he comes back with the list. He's got 100 things on the list. Warren Buffett is like, okay, this is good. I want you to go back and I want you to circle the top 5 things that are on this list. So he comes back, he's got him 5. He's like, all right, now what you going to do with the other 95? He's like, oh, I'll just get to those and I'm ready. He's like, nope. What you're going to do is forget those things exist. What you're going to do is focus just on these 5 things because that's plenty. And you mastering each of them is going to take plenty of time. You don't have time to even think. These other 95 things are now your enemy because what they're doing is distracting you from your focus. Here's step number 4, y'all. Invest with purpose. So far we've been looking at the past, right? We've been looking at trends and patterns, trying to figure out what works real well and what works real bad and gives us a bunch of headaches, right? But maybe it's time for us to look at the pyramids for a minute. It's one of my favorite structures on planet Earth, right? It might not look like it on the surface, but the ancient Egyptians clearly understood what we're calling Pareto's Principle, right? They accomplished it using 2 strategies: planning out a solid foundation and then building with the right materials. Think about that. Pyramid is the strongest shape, probably ever invented. You know what I mean? Look at how it's lasted the test of time. I don't know how many other wonders of the world you guys are familiar with, but most of them are not holding up as well as the pyramids when you compare how long they've been around. So check it out. That pyramid shape is proven to stand the test of time, and so will your life if you choose the right pillars that you're building on. You're capable of choosing correctly, right? If you choose the correct foundation that you're laying your life on, you're going to be good. And then the second thing is that a quick Google search will show you that the pyramids are made mainly of limestone, a couple other materials in there, but some of the greatest structures ever created by the human race are made of mostly one material. And they've lasted over 4,500 years. So what am I saying? I'm saying maybe it's time for you to go through your list, right? With an eye towards your big picture. Maybe it's time for you to identify which behaviors will actually get you there. Maybe you underline them in red if you have to. Because it's not going to take a lot. Becoming great is so easy in a world where most people embrace mediocrity. Most people are embracing the trivial many instead of the vital few. And that brings me to the last one I got for you this evening. And that is produce happiness, y'all. Produce happiness. Millionaires, you've already completed. If you've gone through this list and taken the exercise seriously, when it's time for you to approach this and you get to this step, you will have already completed 80% of this thing, right? Step 5 is just going to kind of complete itself at that point. You've just created, on paper, a perpetual happiness machine. And in these days and times, is that not what we need? Man, we don't know what's going to go on with this next phase of the pandemic, but I know the world has been changed forever. I know that Your list is going to change just like the world. Our lives are dynamic, right? They're constantly changing. And only growth is optional. Your list is going to change, just like the big picture for you will. Nothing is static. And the only thing that stays the same is change. But guess what? That's a good thing. It means that now that we understand what we're calling here Pareto's principle, we now have a skill set that can crush any obstacle in our path. We now have a skill set that can avoid the obstacles completely if we choose to use it that way. You made this possible. And since you already have the skills in place, you'll only need 20% of your capacity to get to step 5. All you got to do is repeat, baby. All you got to do is run through this list. These are 5 different ways that you can utilize what we call Pareto's principle. Your best life is worth it. This principle is life-changing. And, I'm living proof of it. I don't even try to master things that don't fit into my wheelhouse. I've got buddies, man, that try their best. I mean, it's like they're obsessed. And I think that it's so cool. I look at it as being such a cool thing that they're willing to just dive into a brand new discipline and then just get that one under their belt. I got a buddy who started in graphic design and then went to running a flyer company. And then after that, got into real estate, was doing fix and flips, and then, has a bunch of properties that he rents out, and then gets into running ads, and then gets into e-commerce, and then gets in, and he just jumps into the new discipline and figures them out. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that my friend is rare. There are a lot of us who maybe don't have the freedom to pursue so many different disciplines. But let me tell you where my friend is just like you. Let me tell you where you're just like my friend. You have many interests. And one thing that he does is he focuses supremely on that one discipline before he moves to something else. You always hear people talking about how millionaires have 7 revenue streams and all of this stuff. Yeah, but let me tell you what they do. They focus on one thing first, and then everything else starts to be an offshoot of that one thing. What we're talking about is focus here. What we're talking about is the fact that as long as it's 80% of your results coming from 20% of your activity, as long as you're wearing 80% of the time only 20% of your wardrobe, as long as you are talking to 20% of the people in your phone 80% of the time, I could go on and on and on. Maybe this is something to apply to your life. We're going to end the call the way we always do, saying something, for you to kind of think about, something maybe to add to your list of mantras. I hope this has been helpful for you. And what I want to say is that, and I'll start it off, my name is Haziq Ali, and I am going to focus on the vital few instead of the trivial many. I hope this was helpful for you. Good night. Each one teach one, spread this to somebody else who needs it, and I'm gonna start this thing off.
All participants are unmuted.
My name is Haziq Ali, and I'm gonna focus my life on the vital few instead of the trivial many.